this situation somehow just got even more insane as everyone's following the Kawhi Leonard saga right now. All the investigations going on in regards to Kawhi's backdoor deals with the LA Clippers in order to get him more money. But now another bombshell has just dropped, specifically in regards to Kawhi Leonard's negotiations with the Toronto Raptors back during that 2019 free agency. What he was demanding from Raptors ownership, including Larry Tannenbaum, Ed Rodgers, everyone out there in MLSC, and what Kawhi's thinking actually was if he wasn't to actually land those crazy behind-the-scenes requests from the LA Clippers. And frankly, this is what irks me to the core most, because we actually know what Kawhi Leonard was thinking if the Clippers didn't cheat. If they didn't go behind the NBA's back, Kawhi Leonard would still be a Toronto Raptor. And we'll break down why that's the case by reading through the lines of these reports. So there's a lot of stuff to sink our teeth into in this video, so appreciate everyone that's been supporting the channel as of late. Still 53% haven't hit the subscribe button just yet, so make sure you guys hit that sub button if you're enjoying the Toronto Raptors coverage, because it's about to be a crazy season for this Toronto Raptors team. But we're dating back to probably the craziest offseason in Toronto Raptors history, this whole Kawhi Leonard saga. Just a bit of context, because we made 2 videos on this. Make sure to check those out if you're not sure what's going on, if I'm speaking nonsense here to you right now. But of course, Kawhi Leonard, a guy that won us an NBA championship, a superstar, left the Toronto Raptors after winning a championship and went to the LA Clippers in a decision that frankly baffled me, despite his desire to go back home to to California. He's from San Diego, went to LA, and all that type of stuff. Now, investigations have come out that Kawhi Leonard was getting a bunch of behind-the-scenes money from the LA Clippers that circumvented the NBA cap, that essentially gave them extra incentive to go to LA and play for the Clippers because he was getting extra money that wasn't on the books of the NBA. Of course, completely illegal, completely goes against the integrity of the NBA, and ruins the point of a salary cap in the league. So that's all nuts. They're getting investigated. We break down the details of that in previous videos. What's going on with this whole latest Toronto Raptors updates? Because there's been a lot of rumors over the years about what Kawhi Leonard actually wants, what his thought process was during this whole era, the planes and all that. Kawhi Leonard, the helicopter flying over every single move that he had for that week of free agency. We were wondering what he was going to do. Now, those details have been leaked, and where his head is actually leaked in terms of what's going on. So I'll dive into those first before I give my big takes and big analysis of what's going on. So this is coming from Bruce Arthur, essentially saying that it's possible this scandal dates back to at least 2019. All this requests for cap circumvention and stuff like that. As after the Raptors won the NBA title, Leonard became a free agent and chose between Los Angeles and Toronto. The Raptors were believed that there was a real chance that he would return instead of going to the Clippers, despite the lure of Leonard's home state of California. Leonard didn't want to play with LeBron James, so the Lakers were a third wheel in the sweepstakes. Jimmy Butler, a preferred teammate that he was looking for, was headed to Miami, and Leonard recognized that Toronto was the best basketball situation, all told. So this is the first thing. First part of this, which absolutely sickens me, because Kawhi, of course, NBA champion, everyone wanted him back on this team. There was 3 teams in this free agency race. Dating back to that time, it was the Lakers, it was the Clippers, and it was the Raptors. The Clippers were, from the public's perspective, the team that was least likely. They weren't that great of a squad. Kawhi Leonard was looking like the best player out there in the entire NBA. Why would you go to a situation, after winning an NBA championship that wasn't really ready to compete? So the Clippers felt like a squad that wasn't really ready to go. And the Lakers, who just got Anthony Davis, who had a prime, relatively prime LeBron James out there on the squad, forming a big 3 there would guarantee championships. Everyone thought that they were the legitimate threat. Being in his home state of California, the Lakers were the team that Kawhi Leonard would actually go to rather than the Clippers. Of course, the Clippers were rumored, and this is the team he ended up going to, but the Lakers were the team that everyone felt like, okay, this is where he would have went. And I've heard a lot of people say, if the Clippers didn't do this, he was just going to the Lakers and stuff. So he wasn't going to the Lakers. They were off the table, essentially. They were a deep third. He didn't want to play with LeBron James. So it was between the Raptors and the LA Clippers. And as this report states, Kawhi knew the best basketball situation, even the Paul George stuff, was with the Toronto Raptors. So that's that there. So why did he go to the LA Clippers? Well, we'll break down some of these details here now. So basically, without a Paul George trade from Oklahoma City, Leonard was not going to LA. And of course, the Clippers were desperate enough to make that all-league altering trade. So that's another thing that's annoying. The Clippers willing to terrorize the franchise, completely trade away all their assets, trade away Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, make one of the craziest trades in NBA history. They don't do that, which of course ended up being a dud trade. That did work out for the LA Clippers. They did do that absolutely insane deal. They wouldn't have got Kawhi. Kawhi would have still been a Toronto Raptor. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on with this whole situation, but we knew that. That isn't super novel stuff there. But Kawhi Leonard's asks from the Toronto Raptors are pretty crazy. Now, the first bit of this that I have to break down are stuff that a lot of people have already heard. But according to multiple sources with knowledge of Toronto Raptors negotiations with Leonard in 2019, told the Star that Leonard's uncle and representative, Dennis Robinson, made demands that line up almost perfectly with what Leonard reportedly got from Aspiration. According to those sources, who were granted anonymity in order to speak freely about negotiations, Robertson's list was long and it was absurd, and it included a trade for Paul George, which featured an exorbitant price tag, and it included a slice of ownership of the Toronto Maple Leafs, which Robertson was told was impossible. So this is stuff that we've already heard. I mean, I covered this back in 6 years ago now at this point. The Raptors negotiations in terms of potentially trading for Paul George, was it one of these things to bid up the price and he was going to LA anyways? That's not the case. That was a theory that was going on for a long time. The Raptors were just used to raise the price for OKC. They used us. He was going to the LA Clippers anyways. That definitely wasn't the case in terms of these discussions and chats and reports that are coming out here now. But we knew this, and we heard in the reports, broke this down in recent videos, they wanted a piece of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Quickly shut down there. I'm going to dive into this a little bit later as well. But the things that make this crazy and insane, because if that was it, that's enough, right? That's enough to look at Kawhi and be like, you are on another level crazy, asking for that type of stuff, right? Like, that is absolutely insane. It gets crazier in terms of what Kawhi Leonard's actual asks from the Toronto Raptors were. So basically, but two details stand out in retrospect. One, Robertson asked for ownership stakes in outside companies, not just the Leafs, which he seemed to believe was separate, but with other with companies with that MLC had a relationship. And two, the Raptors were told they needed to match at least $10 million per year in extra sponsorship income. Teams are allowed to introduce players to team sponsors, but they cannot negotiate deals, and MLSE was aware to that fact. Now, this is something that pairs along well with the report I already brought up earlier from John Gambadoro, where essentially the Toronto Raptors, Larry Tannenbaum, owner Larry Tannenbaum, part of the MLSE team, was essentially, or Achilles Sports Groups, working to get an extra $15 million in endorsement money for Kawhi. Now, you're allowed to introduce the player. There's a shady line here right now, but Larry Tannenbaum was using his relationships, using his stuff to get Kawhi Leonard there. MLSE, Larry, all these guys, Eddie Rogers, the whole ownership team were working together to get Kawhi Leonard some extra sponsorship dollars. Now, this is above board if you're just doing the introductions and then you don't negotiate on the player's behalf. So that's all well and good, so to speak, but this report from, Pablo Torre that everyone is bringing up here right now in terms of Kawhi's being investigated and stuff like that is because he didn't have anything to do with the tree planting company. He was paid an exorbitant amount of money and didn't do any public, hey, I'm Kawhi Leonard. I love planting trees. Didn't do any of that. So what's going on here? What makes this super, super sketchy and insane? So basically came out and said, but it didn't end there. As one source put it, when he was told about the corporate sponsors in Toronto, who was happy to have Leonard as a pitchman, his camp said, we don't want to do anything. The Raptors representative said any sponsor would want to shoot ads or arrange appearances. Robertson reiterated that Leonard didn't want to do anything for the money. That's when the Raptors realized Leonard wasn't asking to be introduced to Toronto's corporate community. They were asking to arrange no-show jobs and arrange no investments, and MLSE rejected both proposals. So what does this mean in less jargony terms and negotiations, the cat behind-the-scenes stuff? Kawhi Leonard asked the Toronto Raptors, he asked their ownership group not to just get introduced to these sponsors, not just to, hey, can you put me in, contact with the guys from Osmos? I know Larry, Eddie, you guys know the owner of that, whatever, right? Like, he wasn't doing that stuff. He wanted a no-show gig. He wanted this money for no work. He didn't, his Uncle Denny, a guy that's out there negotiating, he didn't want to spend the time to collect his tens of millions of dollars. He was like, I don't want to negotiate deals. I don't want to do all this stuff to that and whatever. I just want to get paid. And this is what made this whole saga with the LA Clippers even more crazy, even more insane, right? Like a blatant obstruction of the rules out there in the NBA. Kawhi Leonard didn't show up for this tree planting company and just wanted the bread. And Steve Ballmer's investment in the company made it easy for him to actually do that. Kawhi got paid a ton of money from this tree planting company and then basically, didn't do a single thing. There wasn't a public thing. The fact that he requested this from the Toronto Raptors is absurd. The fact that this is coming out with the LA Clippers is very, very sketchy. And when you combine these two reports, when you combine these two things, that he asked for this directly from the Toronto Raptors, and specifically that the LA Clippers ended up doing what's something that looks very, very exact to what this actually is, Kawhi Leonard circumvented the cap. He did this. This is something that the evidence is mounting crazier by the day. And what makes this even more sick is the first part of this report. Kawhi Leonard knew the best basketball situation, all told, was with the Toronto Raptors. Now, he did want that Paul George trade, as we discussed, and as I broke down back in the day out here now at this point. And that trade would have included, the starting asking price for this, as you can see at the bottom of this this paragraph, was Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and 4 unprotected first-round picks. So, coming off a championship, a guy that, was absolutely dominant in Pascal Siakam, a guy that, went on to be a multi-time All-Star, a beast. Fred VanVleet, a guy that became an all-star, of course, had his ups and downs, whatever, but still, at the time, a very up-and-coming prospect, 4 unprotected firsts, and that was before you even had to match salaries, because both those guys at the time were on rookie contracts, so, you would have had to thrown in, dare I say, a Kyle Lowry, Serge Ibaka. That's what, if you date back to these videos, right? Like, that's who the money was only going to line up. If on top of the 4 firsts, Pascal and Fred, you would have had to attach a Lowry, would have attached an Ibaka, a Gasol, one of those dudes out there in the mix to, get this deal done, especially if Westbrook was coming back as well. So that would have been horrible for the Toronto Raptors team, and that was a request. The Raptors dodged a bullet there as well, especially, at the time, Paul George was a near MVP candidate. Russell Westbrook was still, highly regarded as one of the top point guards in the NBA. So it was a weird situation to bring up, discuss like these. Those were two guys at the prime of their careers. Would have been horrible for the future of the Toronto Raptors. Would have been a horrible basketball move for this team. And it's crazy that Kawhi Leonard specifically wanted that with how good this Toronto Raptors team was. But I digress. If the Toronto Raptors, if this dude moved to go to, if the Clippers didn't end up paying Kawhi Leonard all that money, all of that bread, behind the scenes, he would have been with the Raptors. Like the only other situation that made sense was the LA Lakers. And, it didn't happen. It did go down. I don't know. This has always irked me. People have brought this up in my comment section for just get over the Kawhi stuff. Get over the Kawhi stuff. I mean, I'm even making videos out here right now, like how good a lineup would be if contract gets bought out, if he came back. I love Kawhi Leonard. I don't care about the backdoor deals. He won us a championship. All of that type of stuff. I'm just sickened by all this, man. I can't believe the NBA, I hope the Clippers get justice. Like, I hope they get stripped of a decade worth of first-round picks. I hope the contract gets voided. And I just don't, even if he doesn't come to us, like, it sickens me, man. It absolutely sickens me with what we had. What Raptors fans had back in 2019. All I'm saying, it's going to come back. I believe in Scottie. I believe in Ingram. I believe in this team. And we're going to make it happen. But, folks, you guys have been sick as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.